This is the life, isn't it? Welcome to episode 9 of Ben the Boat Painter, a relaxing look at life and nature on the canals as we paint two 48-foot narrowboats, which we are gently paddling towards as we speak. But what are we going to do when we get there? Well, first of all, we're going to start work on the sides. We're then going to finish work on the back hatch, and if that weren't enough, we're going to be putting our first coat of paint on the back doors. And after all that, I think we can wrap things up with a little nature exploration up the hillside to see what kind of birds and insects surround us in this beautiful setting. So without further ado, let's get started. So here we are in the trusty rowing boat, letting the breeze gently blow us down the sides of Scarlet, and we're going to have a look at some of the issues we need to tackle when we paint the sides. Now, I always think the sides of a narrowboat is the showcase of the paint job. It's always the first thing we look at when we're admiring a freshly painted boat. So it's going to need to look nice, but we have some significant challenges ahead of us if we're to achieve that, the first of which being flaky paint, which is not unusual, but in this case, it's particularly bad. So we're going to have to be sanding that down. We need to remove as much of this, oh my god, it's really coming off there, much of this loose material as we can. And there's also oh, hello little coot, hello. See ya. We also have to consider the texture of the existing paint. We can tell it's been rolled on because it's got this kind of quite distinctive orange peel like texture to it. Don't want to be too critical of whoever did it in the past, by all means, but there is some drips here and there. There's some sort of quite irregular roller marks in places as well. Also, it looks as if even it might have rained on some of it, because I can see some quite clear raindrop marks there. So the last problem is actually, this is going to be the hardest for sure, definitely the hardest. In fact, I've never had to contend with this specific issue before. Many times with narrowboats on the sides, you'll see what I call coach lines going around the border, which Tranquil Waters also has. Now, Scarlet has them as well, but rather than being painted on, they've been applied with like a vinyl sticker, which, being a painter, I'm not a massive fan of. But the problem is, not only have they been stuck on, they've been painted over as well. Now, I have in the past removed these sort of vinyl lines. Let's have a look. There we go. So we've got this, this is terrible. Look, the paint is flaking off. We've got a vinyl stick-on that itself has been painted over. I'm not looking forward to this, to be honest. So normally what we would do is we would remove the vinyl sticker lines, which can be quite stubborn sometimes, but it's usually doable, especially in the hot weather. If it's in the hot weather, the adhesive softens considerably, and the vinyl is a lot easier to take off. In the cold, it's almost impossible. So I think, well, I've been wondering what to do about these actually. Normally, if a boat had vinyl lines stuck on, as we see here, look at that paint, that is bad. But normally we would very carefully peel off the vinyl, which in very hot weather is not usually that difficult. In cold weather, it's extremely difficult. But in this case, because it's been painted over, I'm worried that if we start peeling the vinyl lines off, it's actually going to start peeling off the paint to the sides of the lines too, which is going to create really, really jagged, irregular marks all the way down. I mean, the vinyl itself might be very difficult to take off anyway, so there's a lot of it on here. So that in itself is a horrible job. So, although really I think this is kind of a bad idea in a way, I'm going to paint over them again, just because I'm worried about the amount of mess it's going to cause, the amount of damage it's going to cause if we try and peel them off. I mean, we could start to peel them off and it might kind of go okay, but then, no, this is really, really, because if we do start peeling it off, say it might start off quite easy and then we might get to another section that's almost impossible. So I think we're just going to leave it on. We're going to paint over it again, which I'm sort of not that keen on doing, because it's not a good idea. Because the other thing that might happen is, years down the line, the vinyl tape might start lifting off a bit, and that's going to damage the paint. But usually when we do something that's inadvisable, which I think in this case we're about to do, it's not as bad if you also add into the process some extra steps to compensate for the corners that you're cutting, for example. So although I think it's a bad idea to paint over them, rather than just paint over them with a normal amount of paint, I'm going to put extra layers of paint on. So we might do 3 or 4 layers of undercoat just to help really smother and just, you know, stop the vinyl from lifting off. So yeah, we're going to put a lot of paint on. We're going to sand it down, you know, extra smooth as well. Also, maybe with a rougher grade of sandpaper. The fact we're going to put more undercoat on the normal means we could perhaps put use 60 grit sandpaper here. This is also going to help smooth down the irregular roller marks. I'm not looking for it. I'd rather just sit around and look at nature, to be honest, but we've got work to do. So without further ado, let's just get on with it. People's reaction when I tell them that I don't use power tools is how usually they question how long it must take, but it's not that different. It really isn't that different. The actual act of sanding the surface with a power tool might take less time, but then you've got the setup time of the tool, get the generator ready. If you're using a something like a Makita palm sander, where the sandpaper has to be cut to a specific size in order to fit the tool, that used to take a decent chunk of time getting the sandpaper ready. But with this, you just got the roll, tear a bit off, and you're good to go. But you know, it's that's a time saving, you know, and it's not about the time really. I mean, how annoying would it be for everyone else here if I had the generator on all afternoon? It'd just be, there's a house over there, they'd hate me. You know, it's on a sunny day. You don't want to hear people using a generator when there's an abundance of sun, you know, because generally people don't run their engines or run generators in the summer because of the abundance of solar power. You could suggest that I could use the power tool from the boat's solar system, but the solar power system. But what that doesn't take account of is it would be able to power the tool under normal load, but if there was a sudden surge of energy from the tool, which sometimes happens if the tool is under strain, it could cause a big spike in the amount of power that's used. That is going to damage your battery setup on the boat. So you do not want that, because it's expensive. You don't want to damage them at all. So this is the way. This is the way. I'm convinced. Even if, you know, I hadn't damaged my hearing and I could use power tools, I would still do it this way. Wish I could turn back time and, you know, just do it this way from the offset, really. Still. You live and learn. You live and learn, don't you? And I suppose a job like this, all you can do is just get your head down, get on with it till it's finished. And thinking about more specifically about how long it actually takes, I'm not usually aware exactly how long it takes, just because your perception of time when you're doing something this monotonous is a little bit warped, to say the least. But because I'm filming it, I can see exactly how long it takes. And this side took me about 5 hours to complete. And I was thinking, just to give a more accurate comparison to when I was using power tools, I can't really believe I'm about to say this, but I actually think it's quicker. It's quicker doing it by hand, because I remember one time it took me a day to sand a side down. Maybe it was slightly bigger, but it was about 8 hours. And I thought, well, how is this possible? Well, I think the key is, because we're using such a small piece of sandpaper, we do not have to put nearly as much pressure on the side of the boat. We don't get as tired, and as we do our sanding stroke, we really almost have to go over it maybe once or twice, and that's it, and we've done. Because we're using a coarser grade of sandpaper, we can get away with using a coarser grade of sandpaper because we're doing strictly vertical sanding strokes rather than the sort of randomized strokes that a power sander might use. So it's incredible. Who'd have thought it? Okay, decent. Okay, we got literally a few square inches left. Don't want to skimp on the last little bit. Come on. Yes. Ah. Woo. Wow. Nice. And I think we can justify putting our tools down for the day after all that hard graft, and we have a beautifully sanded side for our efforts. And I think we've had enough of the side of the boat for one episode, so why don't we turn our attention at the back hatch? Okay, this is the first area of the boat that we're actually going to finish. Third coat of top coat, to which we've added a little bit of overtroll this time. And this is going to have the effect that the top coat is going to take even longer to dry than normal, which will, usually we have these brush marks. So these brush marks, as the paint dries, they're going to have more of a chance to smooth out completely. In addition to that, we've sanded the surface down with 240 grit. And I've probably taken a little bit longer to sand it down just to smooth it off even more. There's still some brush marks, but it's a little bit smoother than the previous surfaces we've painted. So let's just get stuck in. Come on, let's go. Right, no point hanging around. Okay, I'll probably need to put a little bit more thinner in that because it's okay now, it's okay. Starting very early in the morning, because the cooler it is, the longer the paint's going to take to dry. So I just want to have that effect that, yeah, I want to minimize the brush marks basically. I don't mind the brush marks, but let's just see how smooth we can get it, shall we? I've got to admit, these corner areas, I haven't smoothed them off as much as I'd like. There's still those little marks in the filler, but, you know, you could spend your life trying to get everything perfect and you never quite get there, so might as well just keep going. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect, does it? You know, drive ourselves mad, wouldn't we? Drive ourselves even more mad than we already are. So a little bit more pressure because it's the last coat, so I don't want to make any mistakes, because I mean, if I made a mistake, we can always sand it down and go over it again, but you know, 3 coats of top coat is enough. I don't want to spend forever on this area, and kind of resisting the temptation to go over it and smooth it off too much, because, you know, you've got to keep the faith that the paint is just going to smooth itself off on its own, which is, the proper term for that is relaxing. So as the paint dries, or once you've applied the paint, it then relaxes into a smoother surface. So you've got the brush strokes like that, brush marks, and then eventually it should just kind of, over time, get smoother and smoother. The ideal outcome would be it's completely smooth, but never quite get there 100%. Really the optimum time of day to paint, really, because the surface temperature of this is quite cool. Ambient temperature is not too hot either. Well, it's only 7 o'clock in the morning, so certainly hasn't had a chance to warm up yet. And yeah, I'll have all day to harden. Going to be sunny, not too hot. I suppose the optimum, what would be the optimum temperature? I suppose painting at about 18 degrees, something like that. I don't know, this is just, this is not scientifically, I'm just kind of going off the kind of vibe of it. I reckon 18 degrees to paint, and then warming up to like, something like, I don't know, 26 or something in the day, just to kind of help the paint harden nicely. Something like that. Excuse me. The fumes are getting to me perhaps. Luckily we're nearly done. Maybe if I just stop breathing for a bit, it might help. Not for too long, obviously. And that is it. The edge bit. Yep, leave it, don't mess around with it too much. Wow, that is shiny. Yes. First bit of the boat finished, not bad. So here we are, ready to paint our first vertical facing surface, which is a little bit different to what we've been doing before, because if you imagine the hatch and the roof both upward facing, so for one thing we don't have to worry about drips, and we've got to be a bit careful about that here, because oh wow, there's swallows. Are they swifts? No, they're swifts on the wire there. Wow, loads of them. Amazing. I'm getting distracted already. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit trickier than the hatch and the roof. So if you imagine both the hatch and the roof, really it's just one big flat surface, not much going on. Maybe there's just the handle on the hatch, a few mushroom vents on the roof, we can just paint around them quite happily and touch them up later. With this area, we've got all kinds of stuff going on. We've got hinges, cat flap, vents, plaques, this little hook here, the bell. So as we paint around them, it's going to slow us down, which is going to increase the risk that the paint's going to dry and we're going to create sort of ugly, irregular brush marks. In addition to that, as we paint round, for example, the hinges, there's also the risk that paint's going to accumulate here and then drip down the side, sort of without us noticing. That can happen after we've left. You know, we think we might have finished, then we come back and we see like a drip has occurred there. So maybe it's better to just to kind of, well, not paint round them completely, but just be a bit more careful as we're painting around these items. So I think we should just get on with it really and see what happens. Hopefully it's going to work out all right, but you never know. So as we paint, we've got to consider how we negotiate these items. So I'm going to start around here first, because if I started here and then moved on to this would slow us down, and then we could risk making sort of ugly brush marks around here. So we're going to start around here and then just kind of ad lib from there, basically. We've got a bit of a plan anyway. And there's already one little problem here, is that I perhaps haven't cleaned around here thoroughly enough, and I've just disturbed a bit of dust which has come out here. But it is the first layer of undercoat, so we have plenty of chance to fix any imperfections that we create. We're deliberately choosing sort of quite an early morning. There's no direct sunlight, so I want to be able to work sort of, I don't want to have to work quickly like we did on the hatch last week. The hatch was very hot actually, so we were a little bit concerned that it might be too hot, but because the process of painting the hatch was so simple compared to this, we were able to get away with it. But if this surface was as hot as the hatch was, I think we'd run into trouble, because we wouldn't have time to negotiate all these hazards. Again, as with the deck, I'm using quite a small brush relative to the size of the surface we're painting, because I want the extra control around these obstacles. Okay, so we've got our first hinge here now. I don't want to pause too much, but it's sometimes, I think probably with the hinges, it's better to kind of maybe go up near the edge rather than right up to the edge, and then touch it up afterwards, because as I mentioned, you can really catch you out. You can think you've finished, you go away, you come back, and then these drips have appeared around here. So I think it's better to underdo it and then come back and with a small brush and touch it up afterwards. I need to keep moving because this edge is going to dry, and then we're going to have a permanent record of that. So we don't want that to happen. And it's starting to get complicated now. So there's a drip forming from that hole there. I've just started that hinge. I'm thinking about this hinge, the bell, all this kind of stuff. It's all happening. Also, this is a lot, and I've missed a bit. I have missed a bit. It does happen. And yeah, so this is actually, there's a drip at the top there. It's all going on here. Right, so this is actually starting to get genuinely, and there's a drip by the bell as well. Oh dear. And now, because this is dried a bit, when I go over it again with a brush, I'm actually making a kind of an ugly mark there, which is not good. So I need to get concentrating here. Concentrate. Sometimes it's better to kind of go faster, and it almost feels like you're going too fast, but in fact it's better. If you sort of slow down and try and do things carefully, it can actually be detrimental to the finish. Okay. Those cattle again, amazing. They're really cool. Nice. The babies seem to, well, the young cattle seem to wander in and out of the electric fence without too much worry, really. But fortunately, the ones with the really sharp horns stayed put. Haven't seen any of them wandering down the towpath yet. So actually, I know these areas are quite small. Something like painting the sides is actually easier, really, because you've got a nice clear surface with very little in the way of obstacles. I mean, you've got the windows, but they're quite kind of regular shapes and they're quite easy to paint around. But these are quite fiddly, these little areas. I might just speed this section up, seeing as you can't really see what's happening. So I'll just go in fast motion mode for a moment and see you on the other side. Yeah, not bad, not bad. Well, we finally get to have a little wander around. See what we can see. There's a rabbit over there. Swallows up on the wire there. There you go. I wonder how long they're going to hang around. I really don't want the summer to end, I must say. Really don't. I never do, really. But anyway, we're going to have a little look around. Let's go through these woodlands here. Let's have a look. We can see. There we are. Woods behind us. Going to go through there, see what lies. Oh yes, I think I can see some blackberries there. Surrounded by blackberries. I wonder if it's possible to eat too many blackberries. I think we're going to find out this year, if that is the case. It's a dragonfly already. Look at that. What's that one? Red darter, maybe. Oh, there it goes. We are out in the open again, look. Ta-da! I'm going to do the full 360. Okay, I'm getting dizzy now. Okay, see the blackberries behind us there. we're gonna be quite picky with our blackberries now. There's so many. What's that one? Oh, it's a comma. That's a comma, yeah. I think, or is it a Jersey tiger moth? Hang on. It could be a Jersey tiger moth. That's good. We've only been out a few. No. What the hell is that? It's a painted lady. Painted lady. What a good start to our little walk here. This is amazing. Do you remember in episode 5 or 6 it was? I mentioned we hadn't seen a painted lady all year. And here we go. We've been out like 5 minutes. We've seen one painted lady this year. So hopefully we'll see some more. Yeah. Ah. What is that up there? I can hear it kind of screeching. I don't know if you can hear that on the camera, but yeah. Usually, in my experience, it means it's either a red kite or a buzzard, and it's sitting on the tree, so it's not flying around. They tend to call when they're sat down more often than not. Okay, I can hear where it is, but I can't quite feel it. Ah, there it is. There. Wow, check it out. Look at that. Look at that. Wow, wow, check that out. Amazing. Wow. Wowie. We're going to keep going. This is an amazing little exploration. Wow. Well, let's keep going. Now, do you remember in episode 7, we found a herald moth in our blackberries? Well, we've only just begun picking, and already, check this out. It's a squash bug nymph. The squash bugs, they're very common creatures, but I can't actually remember ever seeing it in its nymph form. Well, that was a successful little excursion, was it not? I wasn't expecting to see any of that. That's incredible. And we're barely, I don't know, 100 meters away from home. I think we're going to have a great time here. Yeah, I like it here. This is cool. And what better way to wrap up this week's episode than another view of this magnificent bird, the red kite. And for something so spectacular looking, it's actually remarkably common around here. And I think that's due to the fact that it is not a fussy eater. It will eat pretty much any kind of animal. Live animals such as rabbits, mice and voles, even larger ones, provided they're dead already, so they'll scavenge off sort of dead farm animals. Even worms, frogs, and sometimes other small birds. So, here's to the red kite, incredible animal. And I hope you have enjoyed this week's episode. If you have, you're most welcome to connect with the channel in whichever way you please, be it subscribing, liking, or in particular commenting, and I hope to see you all back at the boat in our next episode.